Thank you, everyone, for virtually attending tonight's Raleigh City Council meeting. We are going to start. City Clerk, you have a correction you want to make from this afternoon's meeting regarding an appointment. Let's do that first.
Yes. Yes, this afternoon on the Historical Resources and Museum Advisory Board member, I had reported that Audrey Morgan did not wish to be considered for reappointment. That was incorrect. Ms. Morgan does wish to be considered and has a perfect attendance record. You reappointed the other people, but I announced that she did not want to be, and that was incorrect. So if you would consider reappointing her or nominating her.
Okay, I will make a motion to reappoint her, and seconded by Councilmember Fort. All in favor, please raise your hands. Anyone opposed? Okay. Clerk,
you so much.
Thank you very much. Okay. Next, we will start with public comment. If we could set the timer to 3 minutes.
Madam Mayor.
Nope, that's not right. We start with the Raleigh Historic District Commission. So that's why you're all on here tonight with us. So we're going to open that hearing.
All right, thank you, Mayor and councilors. I am Colette Canane with Planning and Development. The city has received one application for landmark designation on which I will make a brief presentation. But before I do, I would like to recognize the Raleigh Historic Development Commission members that are present, especially the chair, Gaston Williams. The RHDC has reviewed the report and found that the property meets the criteria for designation. The report was referred by the City Council to the North Carolina Department of Cultural Resources as required by statute. The report has been modified in response to suggestions from the state. After closing the public hearing, the request is for you to defer the matter to RHDC to consider the comments of the state of North Carolina and any additional information received during this public hearing. The property is the Thompson Jones Anderson Allen House at 516 East Jones Street. It was originally constructed circa 1851 with alterations made in circa 1860, 1871, and 1921 to 26. The Thompson Jones Anderson Allen House is historically significant as the second oldest extant house in Oakwood and the oldest still used as a single-family residence. The house is not only significant as an early residence, but also as an example of an evolved house that grew and changed to meet changing needs. While the core of the circa 1851 house remains, it has been enlarged with the addition of porches, a kitchen wing, and later a two-story west wing. In the early 20th century, it was clad in brick and the roof covered in slate. As such, the house reflects not only the early impulse to settle in Raleigh, it has witnessed the development of the surrounding Oakwood neighborhood. The house's adaptation to meet the needs and taste of subsequent owners has resulted in a building with an expanded period of significance through 1970 that incorporates multiple building campaigns, each with importance in their own right. After a devastating fire in 2012, the current owner rebuilt the house in accordance with the Raleigh Historic District guidelines. They salvaged many interior features, including the stair rail, which is scarred from fire. The owner is requesting that certain interior features be included as part of the landmark designation. This includes the floor plan, stair features, flooring, interior trim, interior doors, fireplace, and period and historic hardware. Thank you.
Mayor, I believe staff's presentation is over.
Okay, I thought we were having technical difficulties. Sorry about that. Your presentation is over?
Yes. So the request now is for you to refer the matter back to the RHDC to consider the comments and any information that's discussed during this hearing.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions related to the presentation and the request? Okay. Well, would somebody like to make a motion to refer this
Mayor,
matter to the
I'm
RHDC?
I'm sorry, Mayor. I was waiting for you to open the hearing. We did receive a letter from the owner of the house in support of the making it a historic property, and I would like permission to include the contents of her letter in the public hearing.
Yes, please. And could you send that to all of us?
I think it has been sent to you, but I'll resend it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And that's from Ann Robertson.
That's correct.
Okay. All right, thank you. Well, no one is here to speak on the matter. No one has any questions, so I'm going to open the hearing. And everybody's okay with that? I'm going to close the hearing. And could I have a motion to refer this matter to RHDC? Councilmember Cox has made that motion. Do I have a second? Councilmember Branch has seconded. All in favor, please raise your hands. Anyone opposed? Okay, clerk, that was unanimous. Right, thank you everyone from RHDC for being here this evening, and thank you for that presentation.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. This is so much easier in person, but thanks for joining us. Okay, next we will start with public comment. If we could set the timer for 3 minutes. I'm going to start with Robert Allison.
Hello, good evening. Talking to you in referral to a decision you made on July 6th on 5601 Preston Place. We were actually going to come to the meeting, but we were told we couldn't because we didn't get the paperwork in time. We weren't notified in time, and I called in about coming in. And you rezoned a 5601 Preston Place. Well, the zoning committee wasn't really honest with you about a few things about the property and the reason it's been vacant for 35 years. First of all, it's partly on marshland. Secondly, it's on a flood zone. And thirdly, there's a main sewer line that goes right through the center of the property. And according to home inspectors, you have 11 square foot to actually build on. And to the surveyors that came out several times, you have 27 square feet of buildable land on that area. Here in the cul-de-sac, we've been, not just myself, but my neighbors have been taking care of that property for 35 years. It's basically just been abandoned, but we take care of it because it was a nature preserve. And now that it's not, what's going to happen, this guy's going to find out that, well, I think he already has found out you can't build on it. So now he's just going to try to keep selling to somebody else. And we're going to keep going through this cycle over and over again. He's the fourth owner that's went through this. And that's the reason we're trying to keep it with the nature preserve. I mean, we've contacted Army Corps of Engineers. We've been talking with them. We've got Diener, FEMA. Somebody went there and tore out the FEMA flags for the flood zone coming up through the backyard over there. It's something we've been dealing with for a while. And we're trying to figure out how we can get this rezoned back into the nature preserve again. And we were actually, before this happened, we were going to do adverse possession of it because it's been abandoned basically for 35 years. And we've been upkeeping it. And I'm actually the head of the Beechwood Homeowners Association, and what he was planning on doing was putting a slab house there, and that's not going to go with this neighborhood. because he has to conform with everything in the neighborhood. Even the offsets, setbacks, everything else, that once again goes to 27 square foot of buildable space that the surveyor said that he had, not including utilities and the other problems we have in this area. So if somebody would get a hold of me and let me know what we can do to rezone this back, if possible. I've spoken with David Cox about it. And there are numerous times he's been a help. The representative for this area, I haven't really heard from him. And like I said, this is a well-established neighborhood from 1986. And that's the reason basically why it has been empty for all this time.
Okay,
We had
Mr. Allison, your time is up. I have a question for you. Who actually owns the property now?
I don't have his name written down. He didn't show up for the meeting either. Somebody from the zoning commission did. I work 12 hours a day, and it's like I try to write down as much as possible. Right now, Cass has actually been taking care of some of that also, and also my neighbor, Rodney Carlton. And I just have some basically notes that I'm going through. I can't think of the guy's name right at the moment.
Okay, city manager, could we ask planning staff to send a report to us in the city manager's report this week? Just kind of outlining some of this information on this case, okay?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, we have Deborah Leslie Green, who
Deborah's
wants
not
to
on the
read a
call,
short
Mayor.
poem. She
Not on the call.
is not on the phone? Man, she wanted to read a short poem. I was kind of interested in that. All right, Christina Jones.
8005 Finland Drive. I would like to congratulate Ms. Taisha Hinton on her new role of Community Engagement Manager. I was proud to be asked by the city to participate in the hiring process of this position and believe she is extremely qualified to lead this new department. Raleigh Citizens Advisory Council looks forward to working with her to build a strong foundation of community engagement. We will also be holding our monthly meeting on September 15th at 7 p.m. on Zoom. Please visit our Facebook page for further details. I'm speaking to you now as a mother of 2 Wake County Public School System students. I purchased 2 air purifiers for my children's classrooms at the beginning of the school year because I wanted an extra layer of protection. I spoke to a teacher this morning who said, "You're the parent who sent the filtration systems?" Us teachers were so jealous. Does that break your heart? Because it broke mine. As I watch the COVID cases rise in our school system, along with the prices of portable air filtration systems, I am asking for your leadership in helping to keep our schools safe. I understand this is not City Council's position to supplement the funding where the district falls short. But since all Raleigh residents with children in public school fall into your constituency, how can we work together with Wake County Schools to ensure that all children have a safe learning environment? Being a member of the Facebook group Wake County Public School System COVID Safety and Support, I'm asking for your support in our request to the district and to the state. We request regular testing of all students and teachers so that results are quick and costs are not a burden to families. We request more funding for outdoor eating options, and we request more money to be allocated to ensure that every classroom has the option to air purifiers that circulate the air at least 5 times an hour. Individual parents or schools can currently purchase these extra measures on their own, but that route is overtly inequitable. It is not okay for my children to be any safer than the classroom next to them. My girls were sent home today at 12:30 because the school's HVAC system failed. How are we supposed to trust that the school is maintaining its units properly? We are relying on systems that for decades have been underfunded by our state. This is a concern not only for the school board, but for each and every one of us who want our kids to be in in-person learning safely. I want to clarify that this is not me standing in opposition to my school's administration. I stand with them and ask that you lend your voices to this cause, just as State Representative Rosa Gill did in our Zoom meeting last night with almost 100 concerned residents. As a parent, I am less concerned with what you can't do and more concerned with what you are willing to do to help support our children. Thank you.
Thank you. As Christina mentioned, this is a school board issue. Marshall, if you would care to reach out to Board of Education to see if there's anything that we can do to provide some assistance, please do that, okay? Thank you. Next, we have Lisa Huguet.
Mayor, Lisa is not on the call.
Okay. Tim Niles.
Tim Niles, 11509 Midlothian Drive. I'd like to talk about evaluating policies for success. If it's important, it should be measured. How do you measure success for the new gentle density policy? What measures are you tracking to evaluate this? Ken Bowers, Director, City of Raleigh Planning, was quoted in IndyWeek saying his department plans to track the impact of the city's missing middle housing policy over the next year and report back to council. How will you track and report the lessening of the pressures of gentrification on Southeast Raleigh that Mr. Bowers said this policy may result in? It's been over 18 months since the CACs were eliminated from a formal role in rezoning cases and replaced with a single neighborhood meeting controlled by the developer. When will we see Mr. Bowers report to council about whether this change brought more attendance to these meetings? And was it more diverse and inclusive of renters? That was the stated goal, after all. Has it been a success or a failure? We don't know. There's not been a report. Nothing more than social media postings by councilors Melton and Stewart of neighborhood meeting notices placed near apartment buildings. The mere existence of these notices hailed as successful policymaking. But no data to show if these notices have accomplished anything. And honestly, these same promotional efforts could have been employed to drive more attendance to CAC meetings. I did some measurements on the city's new short-term rental policy. I did this to evaluate how many units have been removed from Raleigh's housing stock and turned into hotels, while the city continues to say we have a crisis and need more housing. I found 102 units permitted by the city, but the Airbnb website has listings for over 240 whole house rentals available in Raleigh. And a quick check of rooms available on Airbnb in Raleigh shows over 160 of those as well. So we have over 400 units available for rent, but only 102 permitted by the city. That's a failing grade by any measure. How can the city control the short-term rental market when so many, in fact, the vast majority of the units are being operated illegally? The proponents of short-term rentals assured everyone during the debate of this policy that rental hosts simply wanted the opportunity to operate legally in Raleigh. But 3/4 of them can't even bother to get a permit. How can the city tell what other rules these hosts may be violating when the city doesn't even know that they're operating? Maybe it's time for the city to be in contact with Airbnb and other short-term rental platforms to get them to cooperate with you to enforce your regulations. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Martha Thomas.
Good afternoon. I'm at 616 Peyton Street here in Raleigh, and I'm concerned with the noise from my neighbors next door. The noise is all day and all night, and it's unbearable. I'm a senior citizen. I'm 77, and this has been going on for at least 6 or 7 years, and I'm not able to sleep nor rest during the day. The noise is so loud and it bothers the ear that I can't even bow to. I put cotton in my ear and a thing across my ear, and I'm still not able to sleep. And I know that everybody has told me to contact the police department, and I have. And I guess they're getting tired because I do it twice and sometimes 3 times a night or during the day. And nothing has happened. This property is owned by Benson Braswell. He's renting this property, and these are foreigners that's in his property. And I have spoke to him about it, so no avail, nothing has happened. So I'm coming to you all to see what could be done, how it can be done, and if there's anything that can be done about the noise. It's supposed to stop at a certain time. And all this that's going on, it's just getting too much for me. My home is paid for. That means I'm planning, if nothing happens, to move to some other place. And I really don't think it's right for me to move. I'm getting too old for this. And I want somebody in this meeting or something to give me some relief as to what it is to be done about this noise that happens at this place. Thank you.
Thank you. City Manager, we followed up on this previously. Is that correct?
Yes, you have. And the police, I got this. He told me to call the mayor. The police department has been here so many times. And he told me, call the mayor and see what they have to offer and for this noise to stop. As I'm talking to you right now, the noise is bugging already. And it goes from this time all night long.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Thomas. City Manager, we have followed up on this.
Yes, and so staff is actually checking into the situation right now, so we should have a response after this evening.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Next we have Polina Vronsky.
Yes, hello. I live on 4516 West Chelsea Place. You guys, this was an agenda several times, and I want to tell you that the case is not solved because there's still, so the city put no parking zone, but the cars are still parking. All kinds of services coming constantly and parking there. And when I emailed Matthew Courier and I told him, cars, not residents, are still parking. He told me to call police and snitch on them. I said, well, how come you want us to be happy neighbors and unite like all of you were suggesting that we should be all supporting each other, and at the same time you want me to snitch on my neighbor? This is not what I envisioned when you were trying to solve this problem. Also, this budget of $300,000 that was given, I want to see the details of this report, because I asked around from the builders, and people were really surprised that to fix a cul-de-sac cost $300,000. So I want to see under the Freedom of Information Act a report how much it really cost and who gave the estimates, like engineering report, where those amounts were driven from, just to back it up. Yeah, so the 7 houses has still no parking, and it's a problem. Let's see. Oh, I mean, this is mainly my concern, because you guys think this is the problem is solved, but it is not, because people are still bringing their cars like huge, and they, yeah. So my husband will be next. He'll discuss more from the construction standpoint. And I understand you might not have an experience in construction, like you all, as I looked your backgrounds, majority of you attorneys, you don't really have an expertise in this.
We're not like you vote or like everything.
You know, how I have no engineering or someone with the data telling me, how much this thing cost. Yeah, they advised on the cost, but I don't think it's true, and it's showing the true picture of the repairs that needs to be done. So that's my. And if we can move to the next.
Yeah, if you let me know, I know I can talk.
Please, Mr. Cassell.
Yes, what it is, like I don't know why we have issues, what it is, like a city of Raleigh have a rules and regulation, and how much circles supposed to be according to layout and requirements. Of why everybody, I talk to my engineer friends. I'm a builder. I spent 40 years in construction. Everybody laugh at me United States, it's industrial advantage country, and you bring one truck, another truck, need on and taxpayer money pay for it. Need only one guys with a tape measure it up, diameter. If it's nothing fit, it means not, like supposed to fix it. This is a city approval, a city screw up, and city supposed to fix it. We do not have a parking. I live in real world. I have an estimate car. I have like a big van, which I do construction for living, and you're blocking like a 8 parking public street. If you put like a no parking anytime, it's not solve any problem. We bought this property because we have a huge family. We have a 6 car and we have a kids in college, we don't even have a parking for friends. And now we have a vote in neighborhood and 1 o'clock you vote, everything look like no problem. I talked to him, tried to reach Mr. Botkin, and he never returned phone call. He represent our district. I want to talk to him about. I just want to see blueprints. When was presentation, like a guy who represent, this case, he is lying. He just lying because, we did test, we send you a video, you can see through evidence. He just lied to you when he did presentation on the measurements. He lied about regulation. He lied about everything because I can prove it as a builder. It's insult to the builder because we study, construction, we do continuing education. It's like, somebody standing in my profession and lying. Only in your council meeting, only one have, like electrical engineering degree. All you guys lawyer, but we live in real world. We need the parking and we need result. If somebody call me, I even offer design pro bono. At least put, for example, garbage day, restriction, or for example, garbage day do not blocking, but we need parking. This is an old neighborhood. It's a grandfather clause. Like you can apply new rules to grandfather in. It's no way it's working. Eliminate circle or do something. Talk to me. Even we want to cut tree pro bono, but at least we to do something. How it is right now, it's not working. We have 3 more circles nobody concerned about, and much more less diameter. And nobody concerned. Look like, like it's not working. Geometry and mathematics involved. If something not fit, it means something wrong with it. Just check your rules and regulations, see how much diameter is supposed to be. You're not supposed to bring 20 clowns. We already attend 6 times to council meeting. It's just for what? Because you can't even figure out
Mr.
what.
Cassell, your time is up, please.
Okay.
Thank you. This matter was heard in committee, and the city council voted today to uphold the staff's recommendation for the no parking zones. I hope that this will resolve the issue, and we said, everybody try to get along with your neighbors. Thank you. Next, we have Richard Johnson.
Richard Johnson, 3225 Oak Grove Circle. I want to start by reminding our mayor of the council's code of conduct regarding how council is supposed to treat citizens speaking at public meetings. Council is supposed to be welcoming and actively listen. They are not supposed to belittle or challenge speakers. Anyone who has witnessed the public comments period of the city council meetings since the Baldwin regime began will have seen her regularly ignoring speakers while appearing to attend to her electronic devices and regularly belittling speakers with whom she disagrees. I also want to remind her about the rules of decorum. There is nothing in those rules banning applause from the audience. Yet in the past, when attendees have applauded speakers, the mayor has threatened them with removal by law enforcement. However, there's plenty of incidences where this mayor has encouraged the crowd to applaud. This mayor has a warped sense of kindness and that it only applies to agreeing with her. She fits the classic definition of a narcissist who can't bear to hear anything they think is bad about them, even when it's the truth, especially when it's the truth. District D Councilor David, the Cobra King Knight, also needs a dose of truth tonight. He was recently quoted as saying he lives in the 5 Points area. I checked the Board of Elections record, and he doesn't live in 5 Points unless he gave the Board of Elections a false address. Knight lives in Country Club Hills, an exclusive area of large homes and mansions on big lots. In fact, Counselor Knight lives in a 3,800 square foot plantation style mansion on a 1.3 acre lot that Zillow values at $1.7 million. I mention this because he frequently talks about only wanting to vote for walkable, mixed use neighborhoods. There's not a single store, coffee shop, restaurant that Counselor Knight can walk to from his house. The only thing mixed about his neighborhood is the architectural style of the mansions on the large lots that surround him. Knight, along with the council majority, also repeatedly insist on the need to allow increased density in traditional single-family neighborhoods in order to promote housing affordability. It's a safe bet that no duplexes, quads, or small apartment buildings will be built next to the single-family homes in Country Club Hills. But you can bet that single-family homes in less wealthy areas of the city will be scraped and replaced by multi-unit residences. And those multi-unit residences will not be affordable because trickle-down doesn't work. And this policy is likely to make it more difficult for lower-income families to build up generational wealth through home ownership. At least we can all rest easy, however, knowing that Counselor Knight is keeping us safe from snakes while making it a crime for your children to feed the ducks at Pullen Park.
Thank you so much. Next, we have Cole McMullen.
Cole McMullen, 10730 Foremost Drive, Raleigh 27617. I recently read over the second draft of the Stormwater Design Manual and participated in the associated survey. I am particularly concerned with 3 changes that have been made in Chapter 6, Erosion and Sediment Control. The changes in this draft seek to remove several requirements. First is the requirement that projects subject to post-construction detention of water must also provide detention during construction. Second is the requirement that major land clearing and land disturbing operations should be scheduled during seasons of low potential for stormwater runoff. Finally is the requirement that effort should be made to uncover no more than 20 acres at any one given time. I am concerned that these changes in removing these requirements will result in further destruction of native habitat for the Carolina mad tom and Neuse River water dog. In June of this year, these species were listed as endangered or threatened, respectively, by the Center for Biological Diversity due to loss of native habitat along the Neuse River basin. This habitat destruction is in part the consequence of sedimentation and erosion from development occurring in Raleigh. It is particularly striking that all 3 of these changes would be enormously beneficial to Kane Realty's downtown south development, which exceeds 20 acres, is subject to post-construction treatment of water of the first 1 1/3 inches of stormwater runoff, and is expected to be a multi-year development that will seek to avoid scheduling constraints such as times of low potential for stormwater runoff. It is my request that these requirements be restored to the Stormwater Design Manual draft, and I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to speak, the opportunity to participate in this survey, and it was also brought to my attention that some people haven't been able to access this survey or even know about it, mostly due to lack of internet access. So if city staff could do anything to reach out to people who might be lacking internet access or in other ways be unable to take this survey or don't know about it, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Cole. City Manager, could staff include something about this in the City Manager's report? Just a follow-up, okay? Thank you. And we have Bob Geary.
Hello, Bob Geary, 202 East Park Drive. Mayor and Council, after everything you've just heard tonight, I think you might want to read a new book called Open Democracy, Popular Rule for the 21st Century. It's by Helene Landemore, a professor at Yale. Landemore's premise is that we face a crisis of democracy because our system of government is not, in fact, democratic. It is rather oligarchic, dominated by special interests and wealthy elites. People are repulsed, and for good reason, because the candidates they elect, after promising to serve them, instead serve the rich. Unfortunately, this is all too relevant to Raleigh. Landemore calls for reform, for open democracy, based on 5 principles. 1, participation rights. 2, deliberation. 3, transparency. 4, majority rule. And 5, small d, democratic representation. The public, she says, has a right to participate directly in the governmental decisions that affect them. They have a right to know what government is doing. They have a right to deliberate with one another and with elected officials as to best solutions. They have a right for these deliberations to be transparent. They have a right to majority rule, since the alternative is rule by the few. If government by the people is the goal, her argument goes, the people ought to be doing the governing. The 5th principle, democratic representation, derives from the others. Voters should be able to know when voting which candidates are on their side. City government in Raleigh sadly fails on all 5 fronts. Here, participation by citizens is severely limited. Deliberations are internal. Public forums are few. Our elected officials, instead of bridging the divide between staff and the public, are keeping citizens away. In the past, we had 18 citizen advisory councils. That system is in tatters, thanks to this council's decision to gut them. Transparency, you cut them off with no advance notice. Our elections, postponed 13 months, and runoff elections actually eliminated. And again, the decision made in secret, 0 public participation. Zoning and rezoning decisions, all done in the back room. Today you heard a task force, handpicked by you, recommend that you be paid more and stay in office longer. That might make sense for a council that spent time with the public practicing open democracy. But for this council, it reads like a reward for shutting the public out. Thank you.
Thank you. I understand that Lisa Hughes is in the audience. Is
Yes.
that correct? Okay, would Lisa like to come up and address us as part of public comment?
Yes, I would. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Good evening. My name is Lisa Hewitt, and I live at 712 Hinsdale Street, 2 blocks from Glenwood South, a district that was once vibrant with unique shops, interesting restaurants, and coffee shops. Today, it's a haven for revved-up cars, screaming drunks, crime, gunfire at times, illegal parking, and litter due to block after block of bars. Let me paint you a picture. We live behind the businesses on P Street in my neighborhood. People going to the bars park in the neighborhood surrounding Glenwood South, many illegally because parking is restricted to homeowners after 11 p.m. and seems to be rarely enforced. Every weekend, motorcycles and muscle cars are constantly revving their engines up and down Glenwood and all the neighborhood streets, adding to the noise. I know that this is difficult to enforce. After the bars close, patrons have been seen sleeping on porches, urinating and vomiting in yards, and breaking into cars. Then many head over to the hookah bar, which is open until 5 a.m. The day after, there are broken bottles, bottles and bushes, fast food trash, used condoms, and vomit. Tonight, however, the number one issue we want to address is the noise level coming from the Village Nightlife Complex, 7 nights a week. The maximum allowable decibel limit per the Glenwood South Hospitality Guide is 55 to 60 decibels. That's reasonable for establishments to have walls and a roof where patrons can go inside to party. That's not the case with the Village. It's an outdoor entertainment complex that wraps around several other bars and literally across the street from residential homes. I know you are all aware of this issue, and especially RPD, who has to regularly patrol the area. However, the managers of the bars are savvy to this and will lower their music if their bouncers see police nearby. There needs to be serious revenue-reducing consequences for this noise, not a $500 fine once in a 24-hour period. It needs to escalate all the way up to closing the bar for the evening. I know that residents have consistently called the non-emergency and emergency police number throughout this year and have not seen any improvement. Nor has there been follow-up from the city after a Zoom call with Councilperson Forte and members of RPD. Several have emailed asking for an update, but have never had a reply. What I'd like to see is, I'd like to request a virtual status update with the city manager, the city attorney, members of RPD, and Councilperson Fort. I also do want to acknowledge that Councilperson Fort is still trying to arrange a follow-up meeting with my neighborhood regarding the hookah bar, and for that, I do want to recognize her. I know this is a difficult issue. I just am asking for a status meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. The hookah bar has been an issue for a number of years now. Things calm down, but it appears that it's getting a little out of hand again. We did put restricted parking in that neighborhood. So what I might ask for starters, city manager, is if we can make sure that that is enforced.
We actually have a work session scheduled next Tuesday that will include the Glenwood South Entertainment District. And there will be an update from staff looking at everything from mobility, noise, amplified entertainment permits, and uses, zoning uses in the area. So next Tuesday at 4 o'clock.
Okay, and then I'm also working with Bill King from DRA to schedule another meeting, and we'll work with Councilor Ford on that. Okay, thank you. But it was an issue before with people parking in the neighborhood. If we could just take a look at that, especially Friday and Saturday night coming up. Thank you. All right. We've completed public comment. Now we're on to the public hearings. So there's one item on here. It's listed as number 3, rezoning Z1021 Creedmoor Road. Due to potential public notification issues, the public hearing will not be held tonight. It will be re-advertised and re-noticed for Tuesday, September 21st at 2021. So I just wanted to make you aware of that. There were issues with the notification process. So we will start then with street closing STC 07-2021 at Triangle Town Boulevard Extension. I'll just say that no one has signed up to speak in support or opposition. Can we hear from staff, please?
Good evening, Council. This is Jason Myers in the Department of Transportation. A very short presentation so you're aware of what you're voting on. Next slide, please. This is a segment of basically excess right-of-way at the end of Triangle Town Boulevard at Sumner Boulevard. Next slide. This right-of-way was platted in 1998, and previous to 2019, there was a plan to extend Triangle Town Boulevard further south. There was a comp plan amendment that shifted it to the west. That is now a part of an approved subdivision to move that and construct that new street. And so this is excess right-of-way. There is the need for stormwater and Dominion energy easements, but it is consistent with the comprehensive plan. And next slide. And this is the conditions in the comp plan to evaluate street closures. What questions can I answer for council? Or
You could take down the presentation. What questions do we have for Jason? Anybody? Councilmember Cox?
Yeah, so this is in my district, so when we're ready, I'm happy to make a motion to approve.
Okay, with no questions, I'm going to open the hearing, close the hearing. Councilor Cox?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second? Seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Stewart. All in favor, raise your hands. Okay, that was unanimous, clerk. Next, we have rezoning Z5820 Buffalo Road.
Good evening. This is a request to rezone just over 50 acres. The overlay is not changing, so the SHOD 1 would remain in place. but the base district is going to change from, if you approve, would change from agricultural production to a combination of R10 with conditions and RX3 with conditions. The request is consistent with the future land use map and the comprehensive plan. The Planning Commission recommends approval, but by a split vote. When you scheduled the public hearing, you asked for additional information about transportation in the broader area. We have provided in the agenda backup a memo, and as you know, Jason Myers from Office of Transportation Planning is here this evening, and the corridor was discussed recently in your August 17 work session. So just a reminder, some of that extra information that's around available to you around this case. So this is an aerial view of the site. We're on the east side of I-540. A couple of views from the street and adjacent. So you can see in this map the area of the property that's proposed that the base district would be R10. That area is shown in yellow. And then the area that's proposed to be rezoned to residential mixed use 3-story height limit is shown in orange. And this is also showing some required tree conservation areas. You'll note along Buffalo Road and I-540. So the 540 piece is tied to the shod. And then there are also that frontage along Buffalo is included there as well. And then the required Neuse River buffer is shown here in a light green on the yellow area of the track to be rezoned. So the conditions here limit density in the R10 area, so that's that yellow portion that's adjacent to I-540, are limited to 6 dwelling units per acre. There's a 30-foot wide undisturbed buffer required along the northern boundary of that. If you remember, that's a kind of a narrow parcel, so the northern end of that includes a buffer. 25% of the area is required to be open area, and they have prohibited the apartment building type in that same R10 area. In the orange area, the residential mixed use 3-story height limit along Buffalo Road, they've limited the number of dwelling units to 300. They've prohibited non-residential principal uses, so it could, in that RX district, could have ground floor, personal service or retail. Has to be, the RX district requires ground floor, corner unit, intersection of 2 public streets. So pretty narrow or pretty specific requirements that non-residential use would have to meet. They have also provided a 50-foot building setback along the northern boundary of that RX area, and also a 30-foot wide undisturbed buffer along William and Mary Drive, which is the eastern boundary of the RX area. So what is changing here? The residential density is increasing significantly, so the density per acre is going up, as is the total number of allowed units, and then the setbacks are changing considerably. So you see that AP district, agricultural production, really limits use, and also includes a pretty gracious setback of 150 feet. So this is consistent with the low-density residential designation on the future land use map here. They've used the R10 base district, but conditioned it to satisfy the policy requirements of the low-density residential designation. And then the residential mixed-use district that they're requesting is consistent with the neighborhood mixed-use designation on the future land use map here. The SHOD that they are retaining keeps this in consistent with the urban form map, so consistent with the plan overall. There are some inconsistent policies, largely tied to how far out this is from the city center. And I'm happy to answer questions for you before you open the public hearing.
Okay, Councilmember Cox.
Yeah, I was wondering what improvements will be made to Buffalo Road between William and Mary and 540? by the developer.
I'm going to let the applicant and Jason Myers from Transportation Planning answer that question.
Okay.
Mayor, do you want the applicant to go first or me?
Jason, you
Either
go
way.
first, and then I'll start
Sure.
the 8 minutes when the applicant begins.
So Buffalo Road in that section is designated as a 6-lane divided avenue, and it's currently built with just 2 lanes, with 1 eastbound lane. And so their obligation is to make all of their frontage improvements, sidewalk, bike facilities, and 2 more lanes of eastbound traffic, to the extent that that can be safely carried into the interchange. And if not, then there'll be a dedication of the right-of-way so that can be done later. I think we expect that to happen and to create a very long westbound, I said eastbound earlier, I'm sorry, westbound turn lane onto north and eastbound I-540.
Okay.
That will help a little bit with some of the traffic in the area.
Yeah, just a little bit, because traffic's really backed up on Forestville.
Okay. Anything else, Jason?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Any other questions for staff? Okay, well, no one has signed up to speak in opposition to this. I'm going to ask the applicant to come up next. You have 8 minutes to present your case.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. This is Worth Mills. I am joined by Caroline Cheeves, our traffic engineer, and Bill Turner and Jim Caravello. If you could go to the second slide, please. So this rezoning proposes to change the northern portion of 7425 Buffalo Road from AP to R10 and RX3 to create a micro community with a variety of housing types. The conditional use rezoning to R10 and RX3 are consistent with both the future land use map and the comprehensive plan overall. There are numerous public benefits from this rezoning and development. We would be increasing the housing supply and variety near I-540. We would be triggering right-of-way dedication and construction of 2 traffic lanes from I-540 to Forestville Road. Caroline will speak to those traffic impacts in a minute. It would extend sewer utilities from Landover to Buffalo Road, making development of the mixed-use properties directly across Buffalo Road more feasible. And it would reconfigure the William and Mary Drive Buffalo Road intersection to improve those residents' safety. For those reasons, this proposed rezoning is both reasonable and in the public interest. Next slide, please. The top right picture shows the future land use map, and the bottom left shows our proposed zoning districts. Those proposed districts mirror the delineations of the low density residential and the neighborhood mixed use designations. In the R10 yellow shaded area, we've limited density to 6 units per acre. As Bynum said, we have a 30-foot undisturbed buffer from Landover neighborhood, and 25% of the net site area is to be preserved as open area. In the RX3 area, we've limited density to 300 units, and we have included a 50-foot building setback from the Oxer property to the north and William and Mary Drive, as well as a 30-foot undisturbed buffer along William and Mary Drive. Next slide, please. So the goal of this rezoning, as I mentioned, is to create a micro community with 3 different housing types. The blue area shows townhomes, the green area represents single-family cottages, and the yellow shows apartments. All in all, this concept shows 391 total units. Next slide, please. Here we have a townhome concept from Eaglewood Retreat in James Island, South Carolina. Next slide, please. Here we have cottages and some of the inspiration for those. Next slide, please. We would like the cottages to front on a public green area with amenities in the middle, such as pickleball courts, walkways, everything that would make this feel like a community. Next slide, please. Here we have some apartment renderings as well. Next slide. So this map here shows the City of Raleigh zoning overlay and the sewer map overlay. The blue stars represent the nearest existing sewer lines to those mixed-use properties south of Buffalo Road. Development of this property will extend utilities to Buffalo Road and make the ultimate connection to those mixed-use properties much easier. The applicant has been in talks with the owners of the two CX zone properties across Buffalo Road, which total 47 acres, and their plans for commercial development in the near future. Although this rezoning prohibits non-residential uses, the road construction and the utility extensions create better conditions for development across Buffalo Road. And now I'll turn it over to Caroline Cheeves to talk about the traffic.
Thanks, Worth. My name is Caroline Cheeves with Ramey Kemp Associates, and I worked on the traffic impact analysis for this project. Next slide, please. In the TIA, we studied the maximum allowable use on the site, which is 426 single-family homes, which equates to approximately 10 to 13% additional traffic along Buffalo Road. This provides a more conservative analysis as the development is expected to be fewer units. Next slide. This slide illustrates the level of service of the intersection of Buffalo Road and Forestville Road. Today, this traffic signal is experiencing a failing level of service with 234 seconds of delay in the morning. That's nearly 4 minutes of delay. The traffic will only get worse at this intersection with time. However, with the improvements committed to by this development, the intersection would be expected to operate at acceptable level of service, and the delay will be reduced by 163 seconds in the morning and 45 seconds in the afternoon. That's giving back 2.5 minutes of time to the vehicles driving through the intersection every morning. Next slide. Buffalo Road is currently a 2-lane roadway along the site's frontage between I-540 and Forestville Road. The proposed development is committed to adding 2 additional lanes that will be in the interim striped, 1 in each direction along the Buffalo Road frontage. Next slide. Here's a depiction of the frontage widening. This development is not doubling the traffic on Buffalo Road, but it is doubling the capacity along Buffalo Road. This image also depicts how the additional lanes will be tied into the adjacent intersections, with an emphasis on improving the southbound right turn from Forestville onto Buffalo for the morning commuter traffic and improving the eastbound left turn from Buffalo onto Forestville for the afternoon commuter traffic. The additional traffic associated with this development would be expected to enter at the new site drive along Buffalo Road, and a very small amount of traffic would be expected to utilize Forestville Road. The improvements committed by this development would primarily be fixing an existing issue and not necessarily as a mitigation of the site's traffic, which is typical of most developments. Next slide. So now I know what you're thinking. What about the bottleneck across the bridge? A brief update is that a solution has been identified with the help of the NCDOT and the city to repurpose the existing lanes across the bridge to allow for dual southbound left turn lanes from I-540 eastbound ramps and to head east across the bridge. Next slide. Here's a depiction of what that restriping would look like. The reason why frontage widening of this development is so important is because even if this restriping to improve the bridge moves forward without this development, it would be kicking the bottleneck literally down the road to where the lanes would need to merge together on Buffalo Road in front of this site. This development would allow the restriping as an improvement to reach its full potential and keep the progression of traffic flowing along Buffalo Road to Forestville Road. Next slide. We understand the neighbors at William and Mary have concerns with losing their existing driveway along Buffalo Road and being rerouted through this development. This was a requirement by both the city and NCDOT, as the current intersection does not meet the current spacing requirements. William and Mary Drive is approximately 50 feet from the signal of Buffalo and Forestville, the one with almost 4 minutes of delay in the morning. Next slide. Here is an aerial view of the current lane configuration. Next slide. And here is an illustration of how William and Mary will be cul-de-saced and will have access to Buffalo Road through the proposed site. Once the widening and roadway improvements take place, this will only make this opening even more dangerous, as then the traffic would need to cross more lanes to enter and exit the driveway. Next slide. This shows the current level of service of the William and Mary Drive intersection with the Minor Street William and Mary approach operating at a level of service F, and the site driveway is expected to operate a level service C or better that the traffic would be rerouted through. Next slide. To recap, this development is expected to only increase the traffic by 10 to 13% during the weekday peak hours. Remember, that was a conservative estimate. The development will be providing significant improvements to Buffalo Road and Forestville Road intersection by reducing the delay by 163 seconds in the morning and 45 seconds in the afternoon. That's 2.5 minutes in the morning. And this development will be doubling the capacity along Buffalo Road between I-540 and Forestville, which is a key piece of the puzzle to providing an interim solution for the I-540 and Buffalo Road ramps. And this development will provide safer access for the William and Mary intersection. Worth and I are available to answer any questions that you may have. She's
Unmuted. Councilmember Knight, you had your hand raised.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Got a few questions for the applicant. Where is the closest grocery store to this parcel?
The closest grocery store is about a 4-minute car ride north, using I-540.
So
I believe
the
it's a
4 minutes
food
is based
line.
on going 60 miles an hour on 540?
Yes, sir. I looked that up on Google Maps this morning.
So you have to get on 540. Okay, how about a convenience store?
There's one across Buffalo Road Bridge.
Inside of 540?
Yes, sir.
Okay, is there a gas station? Is there, can you get gas at that convenience store?
It's in the same area.
It's a Handy Hugo's.
It's a Handy Hugo's.
Okay. With 50 acres to work with, why did y'all decide not to do true mixed use with retail or commercial as part of the project, since you, again, did have 50 acres to work with?
We had heard during our neighborhood meetings from some neighbors, I believe a lot of the neighbors that we heard this from live on William and Mary, that did not want to see high volume commercial uses that close to their homes, which would generate more traffic and lead to the same types of headaches that they're experiencing today.
Well, with 50 acres, you could get a lot of that traffic would be internal to the, I guess you'd call it the new neighborhood that you're developing, right? I mean, wouldn't the expectation be that a lot of the traffic would be could be from inside the neighborhood, so it wouldn't be necessarily from outside, correct?
David, this is Caroline speaking. With how this site is so close to the 540 ramps, our fear was that a lot of the traffic, if we put a commercial node right on the corner there, a lot of traffic would still be coming off of 540 as pass-by traffic is what we call it. And so it would be adding traffic to those turning movements at the ramps that are already failing, and the reason why the bridge needs to be restriped. So we were trying to limit our traffic impacts as well.
So the other side of Buffalo Road, is there any zoning in that area for commercial or potential commercial or retail?
Yes, sir. There are 3 parcels just south of us on the south side of Buffalo Road. They are zoned, one parcel is zoned OX3, the other 2 parcels are zoned CX3. And I believe that total acreage is about 75, 80 acres of available mixed use space today.
And Buffalo Road is supposed to go to 6 lanes, is that correct, in the future plan?
Yes, sir. So we would be required to dedicate and construct 2 of those lanes. Anyone who develops the commercial properties south of us would be responsible for the other 2 lanes of traffic.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question to follow up with Councilmember Knight was talking about. You know, when I think about mixed use, I'm not thinking about big commercial uses. I'm thinking about a neighborhood coffee shop that you can walk to, a place where you can go get, I don't know, Subways or burgers or something, where you don't have to get in your car and go somewhere. And I think that to me is what's kind of missing from this, is even to go get a cup of coffee or go to a coffee shop, you've got to get in your car. And so that's what I like, I'm not talking about a big commercial use. Even lanes for food trucks. Just, I love the concept of this, but to me, it's really lacking in terms of the creativity that could be brought in terms of a mixed use type of development.
Mayor, we totally understand the desire for those localized retail spots, and I think it's a great idea that the city is trying to retool the UDO to make that a much easier option for developers. We originally came to the neighbors with an NX zoning in the east-west portion of the site, and that was not very well received. And so the switch to a residential only zoning was in part driven due to the feedback that we received at the neighborhood meetings. And so we did want to, fortunately, the applicants had a plan in place where if the neighbors did not want to see some of those commercial uses, then, they could move forward and create a successful project using only residential development. I'll also note on the uniqueness part of this, I think the small cottage idea is pretty unique to the city of Raleigh. I know that's been a popular building style, particularly in areas like Phoenix and other places out west. And I think it's exciting that Bill Turner and Jim Caravello have decided to bring a concept like that here. And I think a lot of people who are looking to rent would enjoy that type of community and that type of building product. And I'll also note, we don't have any non-residential uses in the zoning to date. We have had conversations with those owners across the street who do have the property zone CX, which, they would not need to go through a rezoning. They could put together a plan and submit a site plan and get the ball rolling there. But we do feel confident that there is momentum for commercial development across our street. With the signalized intersection, we think that would give people another easy access, even if they didn't want to take a car, another way that they could easily get across the street to those goods and services without having to get into their car and drive on 540.
Madam Mayor, if I may.
Yes, Councilmember Branch.
So I've been in conversation with the president of the HOA of this abuts this property. And the major concerns that they brought to me was around a use where they really wanted home ownership. I think these properties are going to be managed by one owner and used for rental. They just want ownership. That was just their main thing. The other part was around traffic and people possibly using Landover Ridge as a cut through. And I'm aware of the conversations with that HOA as well as with Mr. Mills here concerning Attorney Mills here concerning working with some DOT, our internal transportation around traffic calming. So that their part of the road is not used for a cut through. Those were the major concerns that were brought to me. And I asked about mixed use and things of that nature. And they did say, maybe a place like a Cleaners or something like that. But one thing they said was like, we don't want any type of, drugstore or anything, any big, small or medium box as part of this project. So I think that goes to where this conversation has gone. But one of the major things that I see here is that it does help with our housing inventory. And it addresses something that we keep saying we need to address, and that's traffic. And how do we widen the road? To help the residents that live in that area, not just in this community, but other residents as well. So those are some of the key factors there. But I wanted to bring up the conversations that I've had as late as today with the residents, with the president there, as well as with the attorneys. And they've been in conversations. I think they had a 2-hour conversation just last week, going through it and making sure everyone understands. So I think there's some positive there. Is it perfect? I'm waiting for that perfect zoning case to come before us. But I definitely think this checks off 2 major items: addressing traffic immediately in that area and our housing.
Okay, any other questions? Right, no one has signed up to speak in opposition. Clerk?
You did receive a letter from Victoria Jasmine in opposition to the case that has been forwarded to you and will become a part of the record. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Knight?
I'd like to make a statement before we vote on this, Madam Mayor.
Please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to oppose this rezoning application because I think it will increase sprawl in the city of Raleigh. It goes against the principles of smart growth and sustainable growth for all the reasons that we've talked about, especially to the cost of the city as a whole. This development is proposed outside of 540. It's over 50, I'm sorry, it's 50 acres. And there's only residential development that will be taking place in this development. I think we're missing an opportunity, given that much space and land, to not make this a true mixed-use development. And I think developers need to get more creative, quite frankly, especially in this area. And I know we have talked earlier about a corridor plan in this area of Buffalo Road, and I hope we keep this in mind as we continue to discuss development out Buffalo Road, because it's important. This is not helping us build a 15-minute city. And I hope that there will be true mixed use close to this development soon for the good of the rest of the city. And for those reasons, I will vote no on this rezoning application. Thank you.
Councilmember, Mayor Pro Tem Stewart.
Thank you, Mayor. I am feeling quite similarly as Councilmember Knight in looking at this holistically from the lens of environmental issues and planning in 540 and how we knew sprawl would happen out this way. And if there are ways that we can make this micro community, as the attorneys called it, more of a community with actual third spaces beyond just a kind of green space in the middle, I think that would be helpful. And so I'm wondering if we could consider a motion to defer for 2 weeks to allow additional non-residential entitlement, if that would be agreeable to the attorney. And the applicant, rather.
Melton?
I want to add, I'm a little torn about this case too. After I heard Councilmember Branch speak, I said, okay, well, perfect sometimes is the enemy of the good, right? And to different housing types and addressing the traffic issues, that seems pretty good. But hearing Councilmember Knight talk about how this is increasing sprawl, it's not contributing towards building the 15-minute city. I was concerned hearing that the closest grocery store requires you to get in a car and drive on 540. I'm very conflicted. One thing, and we talked about it this afternoon, and there's still more work to do, but we have been doing a lot of work in Economic Development Innovation Committee to allow some sort of small scale neighborhood retail in more places, accessory commercial units. We're going to look at the corner stores. I'm assuming this development will be built over time. And based on the rezoning they're asking for, if we allow ACUs and corner stores, that could potentially be in this community in the future, except for the fact that there's a rezoning condition that prohibits non-residential uses. And so even if that zoning condition came out, it leaves the possibility open in the future for some of the small scale, the coffee shops, the neighborhood grocery store or market to be available. But with the condition in there now, it just completely closes off those possibilities in the future. And so I'm torn on this one, and I wouldn't mind having a little more time, but I just wanted to make those comments known.
Councilmember Fort.
Thank you. What I heard the applicant say is that they've had extensive conversations with folks in the area. I think Councilmember Branch has stated that as well. And the community has, given guidance in terms of what they want to see in that particular area. And the applicant has worked with the community. Additionally, what I heard the applicant say is that there's a parcel of land directly across the street from this particular development that there have been conversations about adding, commercial opportunities in that space. So, I would prefer that we, move forward with the vote tonight, because it sounds like Councilmember Branch and the applicant and the community have spent a great deal of time, and they've come to a consensus about what should happen on this particular development. And so I would be in favor of us entertaining the motion and moving forward with the vote.
Mayor, can I say one thing real quick? If you're going to make the case less restrictive and add back in commercial uses, there is a process to do that in the UDO. There wasn't in a recent text amendment, but there would have to be a new hearing where the applicant paid for those publication. It can be done, but I just wanted to let you know that couldn't be done in a 2-week time. Oh, Bynum, there you are.
Yes, ma'am. I was just talking with some other folks here in the chamber. I think probably if the range of use that the council seems interested in would require a different base district. So the RX district is very limited in terms of how much square footage of non-residential use is allowed. So it's a limit of 4,000 square foot in any given building has to be in the ground floor corner unit at the intersection of two public streets. But there's not a lot of flexibility there. And so I think the range of use that the council seems interested in may indicate a different base district. And I think to consider that, I believe the way the UDO, we've had this new text change, I think, and I just want to double check with the city attorney that she agrees that the request would need to be referred back to Planning Commission for further consideration and a subsequent second public hearing. Is that your understanding as well?
I'm looking at the text amendment. It says if you want to revise the zoning conditions to be less restrictive or a less restrictive zoning district, that there has to be a new hearing and it has to be re-advertised, and that the council can also refer that application, the council in its discretion can refer it back to the Planning Commission before scheduling that hearing. So, and if the council says to go back to Planning Commission, you also have to have another neighborhood meeting. So regardless, there's got to be a renoticing, and the applicant would be responsible for all the associated publication costs. So yes, it's got to be a new hearing, and the council would have to make the decision to send it back, in which case it'd be a new neighborhood meeting as well.
I have a question for Councilmember Branch, but Councilmember Cox had his hand raised, so.
Yeah, I think if we go to all this extra effort to allow more things to be developed, the builder is still going to build what he wants or what they want. And it sounds to me like that their plan is to build residential. So just because the zoning has changed to allow for more mixed use doesn't mean it's going to happen. So I think it's a moot point. There is opportunity for commercial and what is already zoned CX across the street. And if that commercial is developed, that will service this community quite well. So I think sometimes you have to look a little bit more holistically at these things and realize that this doesn't really represent sprawl, but it represents opportunity to provide more housing. And with the CX across the street, it represents a future opportunity to provide commercial to service the area.
Hold on one second, Councilmember Knight. I want to ask this question and clarification. Councilmember Branch, you mentioned something earlier that you had, in speaking with the neighbors, the kind of things that they had said were, a dry cleaner or whatnot was okay.
Like mom and pop shop.
Yes, and so what we can put in there now is 4,000 square feet ground floor. That's it in the corner. So it could be a coffee shop. It could be a dry cleaner. I mean,
Potential is there based on that. But I would need planning to verify that.
yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things where I know where I live, we can walk to the dry cleaner and bring our clothes over there. We don't have to get in a car. We can walk to a coffee shop. I mean, it makes life healthier and more convenient. And I think that's the kind of thing that we keep trying to stress. Nobody's saying that they want a massive commercial development here. They're saying we want neighborhood amenities. So I've said this before, and I've agreed with Councilmember Knight that that's where I want to see us moving to. Where my conflict is the housing types. We need housing. I really like the cottages. I mean, in the open space, one of the first things we did was move to make cottage courts. And this is a cottage court system. So I want to see that type of development happen. I guess I have a question for the applicant. Would that be Mr. Mills?
Yes, ma'am.
Has there been any conversation about what is envisioned for this very limited ground floor space that could be used for commercial?
We haven't gotten into specific tenants and necessarily the specific type of retail that could go in there, but I do think that within the RX district and at 4,000 square feet, I think the types of uses that are allowed in the RX district and the square footage that is capped at 4,000, it sounds like that's exactly what both the Landover community and the city council would like to see. Not necessarily, medium box retail like a Walgreens or a CVS, but maybe something, that can serve as a convenience like a coffee shop or, there's hundreds of other types of uses that, could fill that role. So, we can't be everything to everybody, but I do think that, by allowing for this 4,000 square feet of non-residential use, we give ourselves some flexibility and, continue to get input from neighbors on things that they would like to see.
Okay, so my next question is there a commitment to do that?
I don't know if I could commit to that right now, but yeah, I can't commit right now, but I think, if we have a deferral, we can continue to work on that and bring something to the table the next time we're before council.
Well, the way it stands now is, yes, you could do something there, but there's no commitment to do it. I would feel
And I
that,
think that's like every other zoning case in the city.
yeah, I would feel better if there were some type of commitment, because I'm struggling with this as well.
Understood.
If we commit, we'll get. Madam Mayor.
Yes, Councilmember Knight, and then
Follow up on the I guess with staff on the parcel to the south of Buffalo Road. What types of uses could be put on that site? I think it was mentioned earlier, this is 47 acres.
He froze.
You're asking about a mixed-use zoning parcel on the south side of Buffalo? Am I understanding your question correctly?
It keeps coming up that this could be commercial uses or retail uses and take care of, take care of this question that has arisen from the council. What could be allowed in that that parcel? What kind of uses?
You're talking about the parcels on the south side of Buffalo?
That's
There are
correct.
two mixed, okay, so there are two mixed-use parcels there. One is commercial mixed use with conditions. The other is office mixed use with conditions. The commercial mixed use tract is about 25 acres, and the conditions there do not seem to restrict use. And so all uses allowed in commercial mixed use would be allowed there. So that's all kinds of retail, office, personal service, most vehicle related, fuel sales and repair, self-service storage.
Any residential development?
All residential, yes, sir. All kinds of residential are allowed there as well in that CX district.
And Mayor, this is Worth Mills again. I just got confirmation from the applicant. We can commit to non-residential space tonight.
Would that be a condition that would have to be submitted by them? What would the,
Yes, ma'am. If you'd like for the conditions to change, we would need those submitted by, Friday? So we could review those and advise you at the next council meeting on the 21st, when I believe you could take action at that time. You could also, but, you know, with the way the zoning process has changed, you don't have to close the public hearing. You could leave the hearing open if you would like.
so Councilmember Branch, would you be comfortable with that? It would come back to us in 2 weeks.
I would be comfortable going ahead and voting this forward, but the applicant said what he said, so I guess we'll be waiting 2 weeks. But I'll be comfortable making the motion moving forward. That's what I'll be comfortable with doing. But it sounds like there needs to be a written condition.
Yes. It would have to be submitted by Friday, and we can vote on this in 2 weeks.
Can I just interject again? If you were adding back uses that are less restrictive, you would not be able to vote in 2 weeks. Bynum, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct. But my understanding is they are allowed some commercial use now in the residential mixed use district. And what Mr. Mills seems to be suggesting is that they would guarantee some provision of non-residential space, which I don't believe is, which I think is more restrictive than the current offer, right? They're subjecting themselves to additional regulation.
Okay.
You're the attorney, so I'm not really qualified to interpret. Sorry.
I haven't looked at the zoning conditions, but if they've conditioned out all of the non-commercial, then we'll have to look at that.
So,
Councilmember Melton?
Yeah, I don't want to create a problem. Look at this one. I think Councilmember Branch has done a really good job talking to the community on this case. I wanted to make some of my concerns known, so whatever vote I make is transparent. But I don't want to do anything that's going to undo the work Councilmember Branch has done or delay or complicate this case. I am confused because I see in the material that they have a condition that prohibits non-residential uses. It would seem to me that if they're going to take that out, then that triggers what Bynum's been talking about and what Robin's talking about. Either way, I am comfortable. Is the hearing still open?
I have not closed the hearing yet. I've done nothing. I'm trying to get this all out on the table.
I'm not going to indicate how I'm going to vote, but I would be, I appreciate Councilmember Branch's work on this case.
So I have a question.
And hold on, I just want to make the correction to what Councilmember Melton said. This is not adding anything. It's just asking that they commit to what they can do. They can have 4,000 square feet of retail. I'm just asking for, I asked if they would be willing to make that commitment. So anyhow, Councilmember Branch.
So in their conditions, condition number 6 says prohibits non-residential principal uses. So if they come back and make a statement stating that they will now do commercial use, doesn't that trigger everything else that you mentioned, item, or not? I need to know.
That's a great question, council member. My understanding of the residential mixed use district is that it doesn't allow a non-residential principal use anyway, because the way the code is written, any non-residential use has to be on the ground floor of a multifamily building in a corner unit at the intersection of two public streets. So I don't see how you could satisfy those requirements and also be the principal. That would result in very small multifamily and very small residential units in that building if that were the case. So I think that just speaks to sort of the proportion of non-residential use in the building. But I think it would be easy for. I believe that they could provide some provision or a guarantee of some non-residential square footage, which I think is what Mr. Mills is working up to.
But my question around, if they were to do that, does this trigger additional public hearing?
That's my question as well, and I'm waiting to get an answer on that.
I would defer to the. I would defer to the city attorney, but I'm not of the opinion that it is. But she is much smarter than I am, so I will defer to her.
Now I'm trying to find the condition right now because I'm getting information sent to me. It's condition 2. Apparently, does it say not principal non-residential, Bonham? Sorry.
Prohibits non-residential principal uses.
So I suppose if it was a non-principal non-residential use, and I'm not sure exactly how the zoning administrator would interpret that, but that would be what you could do with that non-principal. Do you know what the difference between those is, Bonham?
Well, if it's a non-principal, I understand it as an accessory use.
So if
right.
it
so
was,
then the standards of how we evaluate an accessory use would come into play, right? You would expect it to be a use, what usual and customary associated with the primary use, but likely less square footage than the primary intended use of the structure.
like a coffee shop on the first floor, probably.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
So I think some work would need to be done on what they're willing to commit to, and they probably need to meet with some of the zoning staff to make sure that that's clear. I guess it's going to depend on what they want to put in the condition as to whether this new provision is triggered. I will say that prior to this new provision, you could never go or less restrictive, so or more restrictive. So this is actually giving you more flexibility, even though it sounds like it's not right at this moment. So
what is the answer? Will this trigger a public hearing or not? Because I think our major concern is we know we need this housing, and there, as Councilor Branch said, there are reasons to move forward with this. We need the housing and traffic issues. But if it was a simple fix where 2 weeks, we could also get some retail committed to, I would feel better about that. But I don't feel better about delaying this for another, God knows, 2+ months just for that one little assurance.
I think that we'd have to look at the language of the condition. It would have to be something that is not already conditioned out, and that's what it would be. And you could write a condition that would say whatever retail is allowed, non-principal use retail, would be required, potentially before any residential was built or something to that effect. Our office is glad to work with Mr. Mills on that and bring something back. And if it ends up what he wants to do requires a new public hearing, I guess you can just vote on what's already in front of you. It's just hard to answer until we know exactly what they're proposing.
Madam Mayor, is the hearing still open?
Yes.
Okay.
And can we just leave it open for 2 weeks and get the answer, get the question answered, and then roll it quickly after that?
We could, but I sense that Councilmember Branch wants to vote on this tonight. Now,
Well, this is what I'll say. 4,000 square feet is what we're talking about. That's about 2 single-family homes. Well, the way they build them now is probably 1. That's all we're talking about. If this was bigger and more, I would say, okay, let's wait. But when we look at the scope of this and the work and the need for housing, you know, I wish this was a big conversation. It was all about affordable housing, but it's not. It's about 4,000 square feet. So I'm ready to move, but the hearing, I can't do anything until the hearing's closed. So I'm quiet.
I think it's fair to say that any large, meaningful addition of retail would probably require a new public hearing, if that's helpful.
that's not what we're asking for. What we're asking is currently 4,000 square feet, ground floor corner is allowed in RX. And the question was, would they commit to doing that?
And I think the answer is that a principal non-residential use or not? And that is something that somebody from planning other than me is probably going to have to answer that question.
We can't really answer that question until they submit the condition. I mean, that's kind of where we are. We need, if they're going to offer conditions, we need to know what they are so we can tell you whether or not an additional public hearing would be required.
So Madam Mayor, how about this? Let's just go ahead, keep it open, bring it back in 2 weeks. They have conversation. Actually, you got to close it. Well, no, keep it open. Let them come back in 2 weeks. And if it triggers something major, we can make a decision. If it doesn't trigger, we can make a decision. But to sit here for the next 10 minutes guessing, to me, is now pointless.
Yeah, well, I know you put a lot of work into this. I know you want to move forward. I think if we can wait 2 weeks, potentially we can have a better outcome. But I will tell you that I am committed to voting on this in 2 weeks. And if it's going to be a delay, I'm not going to go with the delay. I don't know how anybody else feels, but that's so. Do you want to defer this then for 2 weeks?
Yeah, I mean, I move for deferral for 2 weeks, keeping the hearing open.
Councilmember Melton?
Don't close the hearing though. They can't offer conditions. So like if we want them, if we find out that they can do a condition and then we can vote in 2 weeks. If we don't close the hearing, then in 2 weeks, we're going to have to do another 2 weeks. And like, I think we need to close it and just commit to deferring it. And if we find out that they can do a condition, then we'll have it for 2 weeks. And if they can't, then we'll just vote in 2 weeks.
Wait a minute, let's go back. Robin, let's make sure we do this right. None of us want any more delays. Do we have to close the hearing or keep it open if they're going to submit a condition?
They can submit conditions without closing the public hearing as long as they submit that condition to the planning department 10 days before the public hearing, which would be what, Friday, Bynum?
Yes, ma'am. That's right.
So that's part of the new rezoning rules too. So you don't have to close it. They've just got to get it in.
So if we don't close it, they get it in, we can still vote on it in 2 weeks.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, now if we close the hearing, they can also submit conditions.
That's right.
But then if they take them back out again, we're kind of back where we started.
Mm-hmm.
Councilmember Branch, you want to close the hearing then?
Yes.
We don't want to be back where we started. Okay, will you make a
That's
motion?
if you do close it, we're going to be back where we started. You need to leave it open if you want to leave your options open.
Well, that's what I just asked.
Well, that's what we said. You can leave it. If you leave it open and they get the condition in by Friday, they can still add or subtract that condition. It can go in or come out. If you close it and they submit it, then it will be difficult to get it back. Right.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. If they add the condition, the hearing, the condition requires additional meetings. We can't take it out if we have a hearing closed. So my motions, as originally stated, is to bring this back in 2 weeks, keep the hearing open for now.
Do we have a second, please? Councilmember Melton, all in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you, everybody, for your patience. We will get this in 2 weeks. Mr. Mills, you have until Friday to submit a condition, and I would strongly recommend talking with the planning staff so we don't end up having the same conversation.
Yes, ma'am. We'll be on it.
Okay, thank you very much. And Mr. Branch, thank you for your patience. Okay, next we have let's see. We have Worth coming back for more glutton for punishment. This is rezoning Z2321 Kirkland Road.
Yes, ma'am. This is a request to rezone about 1.5 acres from R4, residential district that allows 4 units per acre, to industrial mixed use with a 3-story height limit and conditions. The special highway overlay district and the special residential parking overlay district would both remain. This is consistent overall with the comprehensive plan, but inconsistent with the future land use map. And the Planning Commission recommended approval unanimously among the members in attendance. So this is just east of Lake Wheeler, south of I-40. You can see the site is relatively wooded on the south side of Kirkland here. There's a church to the south of the site, residential to the west, and industrial to the north and east here of the site in question. A couple of views of the site. So they have prohibited a good number of uses that otherwise would be allowed in industrial mixed use. So major utilities. I'm not going to read this whole list. You can read this. It's pretty straightforward. And that's the extent of the conditions they have offered. The residential entitlement would go up here, as would the office and retail square footage and the industrial square footage. Again, this is not consistent with the future land use map because the designation here is for office and residential mixed use, but is consistent overall with the comprehensive plan. Inconsistent because of the future land use map, there's an inconsistency. Inconsistent with the buffering requirement, there is some residential adjacent to the west. And again, because of the light industrial use that they're asking for, inconsistent with this policy around mitigation of use. And so if approved, the rezoning would amend the future land use map to business and commercial services, which is what is on the map to the east and north. And again, the Planning Commission recommends approval. What questions could I answer for you before you open the public hearing?
Do we have any questions for Bynum? Okay. No one has signed up to speak in opposition. I'm going to open the hearing. Councilmember Fort, I'm going to ask you, do you have any concerns about this?
No, and I think Mr. Mills has appeared at a couple of community meetings and answered questions, and the folks in the area seem to be content with his responses.
Okay. Are you okay moving forward with this?
I am. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Mr. Mills, having heard that, are you okay if I close the hearing?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm going to open the hearing. I'm closing the hearing. Councilmember Fort?
Bynum, did you have anything to add, or I was gonna make a motion? Okay.
No, ma'am. Go ahead.
This is my motion to approve. I move to adopt the proposed consistency statement dated September 7th, 2021, contained in the agenda materials, and to approve the zoning amendment with the adoption and effective dates described in the agenda item under recommended action. This approval is also deemed to be an amendment of the future land use map to the extent described in the adopted consistency statement.
Do we have a second? Councilmember Branch has seconded. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Clerk, that was unanimous. Thank you. Next, we have Comprehensive Plan Amendment CP 721.
Yes, ma'am. So this is staff-initiated coordination between Planning and Development and the Office of Transportation Planning. Has become clear to staff that some of the planned transportation improvements that we were expecting in Wake Forest's jurisdiction are not going to be implemented. And additionally, North Carolina Department of Transportation project for US 1 is going to change the level of access to US 1. And so as a result of keeping tabs with what our partner agencies are doing, we are bringing forward this proposal to change the street plan that would remove a planned extension of Common Oaks Drive because the planned extension would not connect to the infrastructure that we had anticipated in Wake Forest. And then also to change the designation of Common Oaks Drive and Green Elm Lane to reduce that make smaller the proposed section there from a 2-lane divided avenue to a 2-lane undivided avenue. And then this would also amend the street plan to realign the crossing of US 1 and amend the interchange map as well to change the location of the anticipated overpass. That's part of the North Carolina Department of Transportation US 1 project. So this is the existing street network. This was what was proposed, and that designation of the 2-lane avenue divided. And so this is the future street plan. That Common Oaks extension would be much shorter, would just connect to the existing commercial development on the east side of Capitol Boulevard. And again, that designation for the existing Common Oaks on the west side of Capitol would change from 2-lane divided to 2-lane undivided. So this is consistent with the comprehensive plan, and I'm happy to answer questions. I also have with me in the chamber Jason Myers. You saw him earlier. Either one of us would be happy to answer questions before you open the public hearing.
Councilmember Cox, question?
Yes, well, this would be in my district, and the only question I have is there an overpass planned for that realigned intersection?
That's my understanding, but yes, there is. Jason Myers has given me the thumbs up. Yep.
Okay, so it wouldn't be just a right in, right out or anything? Okay.
Yes,
okay. When appropriate, I'd be happy to make a motion to approve.
Okay, as I said, no one has time to speak in support or opposition. So I'll open the hearing and close the hearing. Councilmember Cox.
Yeah, make a motion to approve the comprehensive plan amendment.
seconded by Councilmember Branch. All in favor? Anyone opposed? No. Clerk, that's unanimous. Okay, next we have text change TC 721. This is digital signage.
Good evening, Justin Hermeta with Planning and Development. This is a text change TC 721 for DX digital signage. This is really a text change aimed at encouraging the success of civic and event spaces in the downtown area, including the Convention Center and the Performing Arts Center. Staff in those facilities have identified a need for new technologies in signage that are currently prohibited by the UDO. Intended benefits of the text change will be to use these signs as a marketing tool to promote events and sell tickets. They would be used to potentially spotlight venues and arrivals of conferences and delegates, and also potentially the city could use these types of digital signs for emergency management and public safety messages as well. And so what the text change would do would be to create a special category in the UDO of signs called the DX digital sign, and it would allow the employment of technologies such as LCD and LED and other digital media projections. So wall signs would be permitted up to 750 square feet. Again, this is only in the DX district, and this regulation would only apply to civic buildings and civic buildings with a single room seating capacity of greater than 10,000. And so one sign per street facing facade would be permitted. Ground signs will be permitted up to 100 square feet on a structure of no taller than 20 feet. Again, only in the DX zoning district, only for civic buildings, in this case, having assembly rooms, having at least a single assembly room with a capacity of at least 2,100 seats. Ground signs could also be potentially used for an outdoor sports or entertainment facility, again, only in the DX district and having a capacity of at least 5,000. Here's just some examples from other North Carolina convention centers. I believe the left is Greensboro and the other two are Charlotte. You have some national signs here, Minneapolis, Mesa, and Phoenix, Arizona, and Los Angeles on the right. Just a few other points of this text change. The digital signage allowed would not count towards any maximums that are otherwise provided for in the sign ordinance, and there would be a prohibition on strobe lighting effects, which essentially means no more than one flash per second. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions? Councilmember Cox?
So when we say civic buildings, we're talking about buildings under the control of the city of Raleigh or the county, state, or federal government. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so people complain about them, they know where to reach the owners. Is that correct?
It should be easily identifiable who the owner operator is of the facility. That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Just for clarification, because I saw Robin shaking her head, this refers to city-owned buildings.
Not specifically. The only thing that falls in the category of the description at this time are city-owned buildings. It doesn't call out city-owned buildings, but if you would apply the standards right now, the only buildings that are the size of this size are currently owned by the city, correct, Justin?
Yeah, the way the standards are written, again, basically pointing back to those facilities that have large assembly rooms. In our inventory of buildings downtown, there's very few that would meet that criteria.
Okay.
Yeah. I just wanted to make it clear, it doesn't say this zoning change applies only to the city of Raleigh. It applies to certain size buildings that we are the owners of those buildings in this district.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other questions for staff? Okay, no one has signed up to speak in favor or in opposition. So I am going to open the hearing and close the hearing. Do we have a motion for approval? Councilmember Melton,
I move to adopt the proposed consistency statement dated September 7th, 2021, containing the agenda materials and to approve the zoning text amendment.
do we have a second? Councilmember Branch has seconded. All in favor? Anyone opposed? I know that Carrie is going to be a very happy person tonight. She's been working on this a long time, so congratulations. The next we have text change TC 1320 outdoor bar seating.
I can confirm that Carrie just completed her happy dance in the chambers here. TC13 is NX neighborhood mixed use outdoor bar seating. This is a text change specifically for bar uses as defined by the UDO. They are permitted as a limited use in the neighborhood mixed use district and have certain use standards associated with them. So this item comes from your direction last year, an item that was referred from council to the Safe, Vibrant, Healthy Communities Committee, and a subsequent text change was authorized to expand outdoor seating for bars in the NX district. A previous text change in 2015 allowed bars as a limited use in this district and instituted the use standards you see on the screen there, prohibition on live performances and dance floors, and a provision that no more than 8 outdoor seats would be permitted. So this text change would expand the number of outdoor seats from 8 up to 20 by right, and seating in excess of 20 seats would require could be permitted with the issuance of a special use permit by the Board of Adjustment. The Board of Adjustment would have to make their typical showings and findings for special use permits, and there would be an additional use standard that the outdoor seating would have to be a minimum of 100 feet from essentially any residential dwelling in a residential district. However, that distance could be reduced down to 40 feet, provided certain landscaping and screening were provided, and I have some details of those. So for essentially the type B1 protective yard is a 20-foot yard. You'll see there with a wall, shade trees, and some other fairly dense landscaping, shade trees, understory trees, and shrubs. And if the use happened to be within 100 feet and across a public street, type C2 protective yard would be required. That's a 10-foot yard with a fence and shade trees and shrubs as well. This text change doesn't propose any amendments to the existing lighting regulations, but just wanted to point out that the UDO does have standards that limit lighting at residential property lines to a half-a-foot candle, as well as other standards for how lights are oriented and directed to adjacent properties. As defined, bars would, this text change will not have will impact a large number of properties. Our research has shown approximately 17 to 20 existing bars that are in the neighborhood mixed use district today. And of those, a handful, maybe 6 to 8, are within that 100-foot distance from residential that could further reduce the distance from outdoor seating of a bar to residential uses. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, does anybody have any questions? Councilmember Branch?
Yeah, just so I heard this correctly, you said based on the bars that are currently in existence in NX and their relations to neighborhoods, this would only impact 7 to 8 right now?
So there's approximately 17 bars as the UDO defines them in the NX district. So all of those could take advantage of the expanded outdoor seating so long as it were 100 feet from adjacent residential uses. Of those, there are 7 or 8 that could take advantage of the additional provisions to further reduce with the landscaping and screening.
Okay, so I'm going to say this way. With the noise or issues that we're already getting with some of our other locations, either we need to increase our fines and enforcement, or all we're going to do is create another line of residents coming before us complaining about noise.
Well, I think a lot of the noise that is generated from Glenwood South is multiple. It's not one bar in a neighborhood type place. It's an entertainment district, and that is very different. And I think what we're doing right now is anticipating problems before they become problems.
Well, the funny part is I wasn't just thinking of Glenwood South. I know Peace Street has some concerns, from previous activities. So as we grow as a city, it's just looking at what other locations may grow as well. So that's something that I really want us to pay attention to. But again, I think the key comes back to our enforcement and fines. That's how I hate to say it, but that's how we have to kind of make people good stewards. But I want to make sure that we are not, as you said, foreseeing potential problems, but also not foreseeing the possibility of potential problems.
Councilmember Cox.
Yeah, I have the same concerns as Councilmember Branch. I'm not going to vote for this. I don't see the point in making these changes for 17 basically people in the city of 500,000 when the impacts can be quite large on the neighboring residents. So I'm particularly disappointed at the reduction in the buffering requirements and the opportunity to get a variance to have even larger outdoor seating and even smaller really distance to not just the boundary line, but to the very structures in the residential district themselves. So I'm going to vote against this.
Councilmember Fort.
Yes, I echo the sentiments of council members Branch and Cox. I mean, we literally had a person on the call tonight in public comment complaining about noise coming from bars and the spillover effects that they're dealing with. And I guess particularly because it's in my district, I'm probably a little bit more sensitive to it because I've got constituents who are very, very concerned and having these negative impacts. And so the timing of it probably is not great for me, in terms of just, the issues that I'm dealing with in District D. So I'm probably not going to support it.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we hold this for 2 weeks and have staff come back to us? When is our work session, Marshall?
It's next Tuesday, the 14th.
Okay. In fact, what I'm going to suggest is, since our work session is next week on this, let's put this on as a special item the first week in October. That will give us some time to address some of these issues that there were concerns expressed about. Everybody okay with that? Robin, do we need a vote? Okay, make a motion.
You need to have we closed the hearing?
Haven't even opened it yet.
Okay.
Haven't opened or closed it. We'll
Okay.
we'll do that at the first meeting in October as a special item.
I would put in your motion that you have, you are moving the public hearing to that date, when you get your vote.
Okay? So make a motion to move the public hearing to the first meeting in October. So moved. Do I have a second? Councilmember Branch has seconded. All in favor? Okay, that was unanimous, clerk. Okay, thank you very much, staff. Do we have anything else for this evening? Okay, thank you everyone for being here, and we'll see you next week for our work session. And just a reminder that there is a meeting of the Economic Development Innovation Committee at 3 o'clock before our work session. Thank you. Good night, everybody.